Susan Jackson had been working at the hair salon on the corner of Main Street for years. Every kind of haircut known to the industry was available there for anyone who wanted one. Since high school, the young girl had been interested in fashion magazines and loved standing in front of the mirror and experimenting with her curly brown hair. Over time, this childhood hobby grew into something more. It became Susan's favorite profession and main source of income. Despite her well-meaning and easygoing nature, her colleagues, frankly speaking, did not like the girl, seeing every opportunity to make fun of her. These colleagues specifically were Maggie and Rachel, who had worked at the hair salon since its opening. Whenever an unkempt or untrustworthy client would come in to get a haircut, the girls would try to direct them to Susan, who never refused any work. This time around, an elderly man came into the salon dressed in a shabby, worn-out jacket, patched-up pants, and shoes that were about to start begging for money all by themselves. His dull image was topped off with a greasy baseball cap, with the visor broken in several places. From a distance, the old man could be easily mistaken for a street vagrant, someone who rummages through garbage cans and begs in underpasses. "I just need a haircut, girls. My hair's gotten out of control lately," the man said, and took off his cap, exposing his long, messy hair. The two giggling girls, Rachel and Maggie, looked at each other in surprise. Then they burst into laughter, despite the client being right there in front of them. "This isn't a homeless shelter for you to get a haircut for free. If you're looking for something cheaper, you're in the wrong place," Maggie added, giving the man a scornful, angry look. "Why do you think that? I'm not a beggar." "Here, I have money," the old man answered in a hoarse voice, and took a handful of crumbled bills out of his pocket. "Oh, well, that makes all the difference in the world. With that kind of money, you'll be served to the highest standard." "Susan will be right with you," said Rachel, who was considered in charge of the salon, with a sneer. The older man looked around in confusion, searching for this Susan that he had been referred to. Luckily, Susan called the old man herself, gesturing to the yellow leather upholstered chair. "Have a seat, please. What kind of haircut would you like? With or without your hair parted? And the sideburns, are we keeping them or removing them?" chirped the girl kindly, trying to cheer the old man up. "Dear, couldn't you just buzz my hair off? Soon enough, I'm going to look like anything but a human being," the man grumbled, trying to get comfortable in the chair. As if he even looks like a human being now. Look at him, he's homeless and cares about how he looks for some reason. That came from somewhere in the back of the room, where Maggie and Rachel were taking turns looking through a fashion magazine. Hearing this, the old man shifted in the salon chair uncomfortably before tears welled up in his eyes. He didn't break down. He just sat still and cried quietly. At that moment, it was as if something broke off in Susan's soul. She felt sorry for the old man. After all, he just wanted a haircut and meant no one any harm. There, mister. Give me a moment, and we'll give you a haircut the likes of which will have the whole town talking about you. And then we'll trim your beard too," Susan hastened to reassure her client. The old man smiled gratefully and looked at her with his radiant sky-blue eyes. When she touched the man's tangled, unwashed hair with the scissors, Susan felt neither squeamish nor disgusted. She recalled her grandmother's stories of the days when many soldiers, who returned from the Indo-Chinese battlefields in the 70s, who couldn't settle down in civilian life. Some of them had injuries or trauma that made it impossible for them to find a normal job. So the poor and handicapped had to live on nothing and sleep on the street. At the same time, her grandmother always brought up her brother Charles, who never returned from that terrible war. Maybe this old man too has a reason for living on the street, thought Susan with a pair of scissors, which in her skilled hands fluttered like metal butterflies. Although the price of the service included only a haircut, she gave a free lift to the man's beard and mustache, which immediately enhanced the dignified look on his face. That was not all, as Susan lastly washed the old man's hair with shampoo, and its pleasant scent overpowered his odor. "Well now, that's much better," said the hairdresser. After a close examination of her work, she gave the old man a thumbs up. "Thank you, my dear. You really did me a solid one. Now I look like myself again, the old man said, getting up from his chair. With that, the elderly man was transformed at once, as if filled with some inner unseen energy and strength. And now, as you probably already know, you've got to pay up, said Rachel sarcastically. She was eager to see the old man dump a handful of change on the table and have Susan count it down to the last penny. But to her surprise, the elderly man reached into his inside jacket pocket and pulled out 2 crisp $100 bills, one of which he used to pay for his haircut and the other he left for Susan as a tip. Maggie and Rachel, who were used to taking the best for themselves, choked with envy at the unexpected generosity of the street vagrant. "Thank you very much, but this is a lot of money. Why so much?" whispered Rachel, confused. The old man was adamant and stood there until the hairdresser put the money away in her purse. "Now I can take my leave. Thank you, dear. You have a very kind and responsive heart. Take my word for it, a great bright future awaits you. Here people mock you, unaware that your soul is as pure and innocent as a child's," said the old man and closed the door behind him. Susan watched the elderly man with a sidelong glance, noticing the florist across the street greeting him respectfully, as if he were an old acquaintance. Why would he bow before a street lamp like that? Susan thought in surprise. With Maggie and Rachel's wry banter, the rest of the day flew by unnoticed. When Susan finally closed the salon doors behind her, the first thing she did afterwards was ask the florist how he knew the old man who had gotten his haircut this morning. "Oh, believe me, miss, it's a long story," said Mr. Green, and after a moment's hesitation began his tale. As it turned out, the old man's name was Frank Mitchell, and in the distant past, he had been a famous surgeon in town. His wife and 2 children were killed in a terrible car accident, robbing Mr. Mitchell of the most important valuable things he had in his life in an instant. The funeral and the depression that followed for some time threw Mr. Mitchell out of whack. Over time, the man was able to pull himself together, although he was not his old self. One day, a little girl was brought to his ward with a severe diagnosis that could only be treated by expensive surgery at one of the best clinics in New York. The girl's family naturally didn't have that kind of money. Her mother and father lived poor and survived on odd jobs. When Mr. Mitchell learned of this, he hesitated for a while, and in order to cover all operation costs, sold his house. Many of his colleagues thought he was crazy, but the man did not stop there. His next step was to quit his job. In time, many had forgotten about him, but those who owed Mr. Mitchell their lives remember him to this day. The girl he saved had long since grown up and was living a happy family life. Now she has 2 children, a girl and a boy. The grateful girl named her son Frank in honor of the man who spared no expense to save her life. Mr. Mitchell, who lived on the street, was not a penniless vagrant or a drunken alcoholic. He just thought at some point that it would be better for him. Mr. Mitchell's story shook Susan so much that she couldn't hold back her tears. After all, her associates had, quite bluntly, made fun of and mocked the older man without even realizing his difficult situation. The next day, Susan came to the salon as usual. Only this time, instead of changing into her work uniform, she informed the manager that she was quitting. Maggie and Rachel stared at her, bewildered, confident that she had lost her mind. But for Susan, the opinion of her colleagues meant absolutely nothing now. After all, for the first time in months, she was in a great mood, and her soul was bursting with song. The girl felt an incredible lightness and freedom, as if heavy chains had fallen from her body. Leaving the salon that judged people solely on their appearance, Susan felt happy. And now, all the doors were open in front of her. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. May God bless you," whispered Susan, and after slamming the salon door shut, she went outside, where a new life full of pleasant events awaited her.